the F1 Focus Podcast with Welman and Huw Griffin.
Welcome to the Thursday edition of Formula One Focus. Huw Griffin is back to talk to us again. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the rumors about Formula One going to V10 engines that just don't want to go away. Hugh's a big proponent. I'm not so keen. I'm not so sure. So we're going to look at that a bit later. But firstly, we're going to look at the Japanese Grand Prix. So first and foremost, welcome back, Huw.
Welcome to the show, MV. I don't know why I'm welcoming you. It's your show, but I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking about what is yet to be another dramatic weekend of Formula One way or another.
Is there ever a weekend of Formula One that's not dramatic? Yes, last race, China was not dramatic. In your eyes, I'm a McLaren supporter. I thought it was plenty dramatic.
It's a soap opera. That's what I tell people about Formula One. It's not necessarily about the individual weekend. It's about how they all stitch together over a year-long story.
That's why you can't just follow one race. You have to follow the entire, circus from start to finish. All the stuff that develops behind the scenes, the stories, the intrigue, the developments, the rivalries, the unexpected firings, the unexpected promotions. So while we're on that subject, we talked about this to death now. Yuki is replacing Liam. What's your thinking about Yuki at his home race with all that pressure on him?
Well, he seems to be coping with it okay. We know that Yuki's a bit of a character from some of the things that he said in Drive to Survive, etc. He's not a shy guy. And I'm just looking forward to like I said, the drama, the story that comes out of it one way or another. I can only admire his mindset towards it. To be honest, I like it when not just F1 drivers, but people have an attitude of, if I'm here, I might as well back myself. I know that you spoke with Hendrik on the previous pod where they said that Yuki had done himself no favors in terms of saying that he expected to get a podium in this race. But part of me is like, yeah, go on, Yuki. Come on. What's the point of being here if you're not going to say something a bit more exciting? So I'm excited to see it. But how it's actually going to go, it's a headline either way, isn't it? It's a headline either way. So there's, from a neutral's point of view, if I am neutral about Red Bull, which I'm not really, but from a neutral's point of view, that it's a no-lose situation.
The thing is, if it was any other race, I think it would have been a different situation. But now it's his home race, number one. Red Bull, this last time Red Bull were racing with Honda engines in Japan. So it's the end of an era, a very successful era, come to think of it. Honda paid millions of dollars to get Yuki into that seat, for whichever way they did it. Special livery. Liam Lawson in press conferences being confronted with how did you cope with it? I see people saying that they would have felt suicidal if they were him. I mean, it's that bad. Yuki walking in there and never having driven this car before, except in the simulator, that he now says, no, it doesn't feel that bad. Liam Lawson said the same thing. And you get into that car in real life. I'm wondering that day he gets into the car for the first time and takes it out on track, whether he's going to be either pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised. There's a difference. I think a big part of Red Bull's problems is the correlation between the actual car and the design, what they think it's going to do, and then what it actually does on the track. And I think Yuki might just be caught out there. I'm not saying he's not going to cope. I'm just saying it's going to be a bit more of an uphill battle than what he's expecting.
I think so. It's very difficult, based on what we've seen so far, to imagine Yuki hopping it into it in FP1 and being comfortable with it straight away. When we consider what every other driver is like with no testing these days, it's such a different paradigm to what it used to be. And I don't know has Yuki ever even driven a proper Red Bull before? Has he only ever driven racing
No, drove
bulls
one in
or
December when
Avatars?
they tested. When they decided to decide between Liam and him, they both drove the Red Bull, and then they decided to go with Liam. So that's the only time he drove last year's car, as far as I remember.
Yeah, it's in all reality, it's difficult to imagine going into free practice or even to qualifying it going well. So I guess judge him on the race, I guess. But if he qualifies at the back, then it's kind of a limited amount that we can learn, isn't it?
Interesting thing that Hendrik said yesterday, that Bernie Collins, the Sky analyst, previous strategy director or whatever from Aston Martin, said that in her opinion, Red Bull is the slowest car on the grid at the moment, and the only reason that why it's doing well is because Max is driving it. Do you think that's credible?
No, I don't. I can't believe that it's the slowest car on the grid. That just makes no sense. It would be unprecedented, like Hendrik said. The repercussions of that being factually true would be massive. If for the last, because you'd have to extend that logic backwards to maybe not 2022, but at least 2023 of this is Max Verstappen has taken the slowest car on the grid or one of the slowest cars on the grid to back to back to back world championships. It's unprecedented. That would be the size of that statement is massive. And so no, I don't think it is. I think, like I've always said, there's something going on that we don't know about.
Mm. Yeah, but look at 2023. That car was then the fastest car. Definitely not a back mark. I think this latest iteration, RB21, really the first car that's been designed without Adrian Newey's input. I mean, he left off, before this car was started, getting designed. And I think Red Bull is really missing him, badly missing him. And I think the car is a result of Adrian Newey not being there. So, 2023, maybe the car was better. I'm sure it was probably the fastest car by then. This year, different story. I'm just interested to see that. I see Max Verstappen might get promoted to Racing Bulls for the next race. Maybe there's some rumors floating around. That was the 1st of April, though.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Look, I wouldn't put anything past that organization at this point.
Let's talk about the race quickly. See, dry weekend, and then there may be a small chance of rain during the race itself. Hendrik mentioned that there's some new tarmac down the straight and then through the first S's. Wonder what's going to happen this weekend. What's your predictions in terms of teams to watch out for? Let's look at your pole position prediction, for example. Let's start with that. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, just quickly on the weather, this race is now back at the start of the season. Previously, it would be at the end of the season, but even if you go back even further, it was at the start, and it's been the season closer in the past as well. So I think that they moved it from the end to the beginning to avoid typhoon season, didn't they? That was
Part
the
of the
reason, because
reason, yeah.
we've had loads of like qualifying sessions and things cancelled in Japan because of the rain. In terms of pole position, look, you can't look past the McLarens. This is a different circuit. Traditionally, Red Bull do go well here. I remember Jenson Button was always a driver that went well in Japan for some reason. It was always one of his better circuits. Lewis Hamilton has won loads of races everywhere he's been, but Japan's not always been a great event for him. It's not always been a great event for him. So I'm kind of thinking the McLaren will probably be the favourite. I see it as a battle between Lando and Oscar for pole position. And then, I don't know, Mercedes tends to do okay-ish here as well. So I would say I can see Mercedes being the second fastest car this weekend.
I also think McLaren is going to do well. I see some people saying that McLaren will probably be at least half a second ahead of anybody else in terms of qualifying. But I'm interested to see the effects of this new test on the rear wing. The first test, the first step of that tightening of the regulations was in China, where they had to reduce the gap between the flaps to 0.75 millimeters from 2 millimeters. Now it's going to be down to 0.5 millimeters. And apparently McLaren is one of the teams that they didn't break any rules. They just like Formula One does, left, right, on the edge of them. I wonder if it's going to have any influence in that team up. We'll probably see that quite quickly, first practice and the like. I'll be keeping a beady eye on my team, on McLaren there. What are you expecting? Which apparently there's another team with a different engine. That's an interesting statement to make. That's also doing the same thing. I wonder who that could be. Wonder
With
if
a
that car
different
might be
engine.
red. Mm.
That's interesting.
Mm.
With a different engine, because I thought that Mercedes was supposed to be the other team that were doing that quite a lot.
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like if it was Ferrari, we'd have heard about it because Ferrari social media is very rampant. So that makes me think it could be Red Bull or maybe someone like Haas. I've got no idea. I'm totally guessing. I've got no
No,
clue.
no, neither do I. I'm just interested. So I'd like to see that. So I reckon I'm going to go for Oscar this year. I'm going to go with Hendrik. I'm going to support Oscar. I think Oscar's going to be on pole. Oscar's going to win this one as well. I'm going to tell you right now. Lando second and Charles Leclerc third place. That's my podium. What's yours?
I'd have no, can't argue too much with that. I wonder if George Russell might get another jammy third. Yeah, I'm probably going to go for, to be different, I'm going to go for Lando, then Oscar, and then George Russell.
Yeah, well, like you said, if anybody falls off track, and George typically, hoovers up those positions. So that's typically what's going to happen. He ends up in third place by accident because everybody
Yeah.
else fell off the track. All right, that's fine. Now, that's enough of the race. Now, let's talk about the V10s. This morning, you WhatsApped me and said, "Listen, have I seen this?" And we started talking about it. Give us a bit of a background, your opinion of what's happening. What's the story with this V10 now? So because they've got all these engines being developed. Lexi has a 50% internal combustion engine, 50% electric engine. And apparently that's not going to work all that well. Now suddenly V10s are back in vogue. What's happening there?
Well, apparently, like you've alluded to there, the new regulations for 2026 are looking a bit wobbly, as in they may not live up to expectations. No one's quite sure about them. The rules about the engine, that people are uncertain if this is going to deliver the spectacle that people want to see. And there's been an underlying current in Formula One for ever since V10's gotten rid of, basically, of people wanting them to bring them back. And there's been notable kind of showcase events in Formula One over the last few years of V10 cars being run on track and kind of exhibition runs and things, or lots of footage from back in the day. And every time that one of those comes back, everyone always says, "Oh, that would be great to bring that back." And I think, Martin Brundle said on commentary once that these current rule regulations, the current engine formula, is one of the biggest mistakes that Formula One ever made in terms of they're so heavy, they're so expensive, they're so cumbersome, they're so complex that has it been a good move, especially because the consumer market has moved away from hybrids now. It's either staying petrol or electric, and now we see that governments who were bringing in regulations about moving to fully electric by 2030 are starting to walk back on that. Working in the automotive industry as I do, I'm not surprised by that. I always thought that the push to go fully electrified was a mistake, or at least being overly rushed. The world wasn't ready for it from all sorts of reasons. The technology wasn't ready. So now they're talking about, well, can we bring back V10s? And it seems to have been one of those things that started off as we could just bring back V10s, and everyone nudged and stuff. And I think the racing people in Formula One, deep down, that's what they all want. That's the engine that they love. That's what excites them as motor racing fans and as car fans. And since the conversation about synthetic fuels has been coming in, this is something that Sebastian Vettel's been championing. If we can have synthetic fuels that don't have the emissions issues, then we can have any kind of engine that we want, can't we? And if we can have any kind of engine what we would want, we would go for a V10. And we talk about Formula One being the test bed for technology in the real world. What if Formula One was the test bed for synthetic fuels? And then there's loads of kind of arguments of why I would be in favor of V10s. So talking about developing tech, as I mentioned there, hybrid's not really the way to go anymore. Formula One should never go fully electric, in my opinion. That would be a massive mistake. That would be baby out with the bathwater. Talking about, this is kind of an aside, talking about the eco footprint of the cars that are actually racing around the circuit is kind of like small potatoes from my point of view, given the amount of logistical emissions that Formula One has in terms of flying the kit all around the world for 25 races. That, to be honest, that makes the actual racing cars around in a circle irrelevant, the amount of emissions that puts out. So you've got that side of it. You've got the noise, which is what everyone always talks about ever since these V6s have come in. Everyone's complained about the noise. The Sky Sports Formula One advert in the UK, I can tell you, uses V8 soundtracks. They show footage of the current cars going around and they dub over V8 engine noises. That tells you all you need to know from my point of view. That's the story. End of. You don't need to talk about it anymore. That says the issue. I went to Silverstone a couple of years ago, and the Porsche Super Cup cars. So Formula One has the support races. The Porsche Super Cup cars were louder than the Formula One cars. Now, not everyone might like that. Some people who go to the races for the first time might not like really loud cars. That might put them off. But other people would find that to be part of the drama, part of the excitement. You're supposed to wear hearing protection when you go to rock concerts and things. If you go to see Rammstein or something, you're supposed to wear hearing protection. But so it's not a huge leap for Formula One to do the same. Like I said, everyone loves those old cars whenever they come up. The passion and the drama of the V10s. And the sticking point, though, which is what I guess we can talk about next, is whether the manufacturers want it. Now, apparently Ferrari wants it. Apparently Red Bull wants it. Mercedes, maybe not so much. And we're forgetting that Cadillac are due to come on board. And everyone has bent over backwards for the last decade to get Audi in. And they've basically written an engine regulations specifically to bring in VW Group via the Audi brand. So to just chuck that out the window, that's what makes me think it's unlikely. But from a point of view, what would I choose? A V10 or a hybridized engine, I'm choosing a V10 every day of the week.
No, surely, I agree with you. If you're a Formula One purist, almost, let's call it that, I agree with you. I'll definitely go for that. That's a no-brainer to me. The only thing is, like you said, the biggest issue, I think, is all the money they've spent on developing these engines. And now to pull the plug effectively 8 months before the end of, before the start of the new regulations, that's never going to happen. Like I said, Audi will probably walk away. They just spent all this money. They bought out the entire team earlier than expected. And I've got the Qatari investment fund to buy up a 30% stake. So they're well flush with cash. Got Jonathan Wheatley in from Red Bull to be the team principal. They've got Matteo Binotto in. They've got some proper serious drivers in there. And then to be, confronted with the issue of, you can't use your engine, it's never going to happen. The point is, if they want to go V10, and everybody agrees on it, even Audi for that matter, then it's going to take a while. And if it's going to happen, there's talk about it happening in 2028. It's way too soon. Even if they start developing it today, it's not going to be feasible to do it by 2028. You talked about 2030 being the date where all the governments want to go to electric vehicles, which is being walked back. I mean, this is just realistic. The one thing I do want to ask you though is you talked about the noise for the Netflix generation, which I refer to people who started watching Formula One because of Netflix, which I think is a good thing. The younger generation, like you said, I'm not sure if they never knew Formula One to be that noisy or that visceral almost. Do you honestly think they will take to it kindly? Because that is the future. There's no use going to this V10 engine, nobody likes it, and then having to go back again because the younger generation doesn't like it. What do you think of that?
I think that people will be suggestible. I think if you make a big song and dance about everybody loves it and all the drivers will love it, let's get that straight first off. All the drivers will absolutely love it. All of the old drivers in the media will absolutely love it. Then, I think your only problem is if you get someone who goes to a circuit, maybe has some kind of sensitivity around their hearing or something, or
Mm.
it has some kind of knock-on effect where they're not expecting it. Like I said, you could make the recommendation to wear hearing protection. Like I said, that's not completely scandalous. That could arguably make it more exciting. And these engineers are smart enough to be able to come up with an exhaust system that they can hit a precise decibel level. That is possible. So I think that if you market it and it markets itself basically, but if you, as long as you get the message that everybody loves this and you lean on the heritage, because all of the old fans will be in favor of it, all the drivers will be in favor of it, all the pundits will be in favor of it. So these young audience people will be suggestible. It's just that if you get to a race, particularly in Europe, and someone goes to a circuit and has a bad experience because of the noise, that you potentially have a PR management situation on your hands. But like I said, the Porsche Super Cup Support
Mm.
Series cars are already that loud. So, you know, I think it's a surmountable hurdle.
I was watching an old Formula One race the other day, and the one thing that I noticed immediately is how small the cars were. Small and nimble. And when Fernando Alonso started racing way back when, 24 years ago, he was actually referring to that the other day. If these new engines get used or maybe it gets introduced, the engine's going to be lighter, the car's going to be lighter, the car's going to be smaller, the cars are going to be more nimble. It's going to make for better racing. And they're going to be probably a lot cheaper. There's a lot of arguments in favor of going V10. I think the only thing is that they've now maybe gone too far down this hybrid road, even with the new regulations, to do a quick turnaround. But if they can get the manufacturers on board, that's one thing. The other thing is if they don't get the manufacturers on board, they might get some of the old independent suppliers, engine suppliers back, like Cosworth, for example. Cosworth
Ah,
for many, many years supplied Formula One engines successfully. So that'll be interesting.
that's
That's
a great
something.
point. I forgot about that. What a great point. That would be really cool.
But if Audi decides, to leave in half, it's fine because we're not that dependent. There's actually a risk of having all the manufacturers sort of controlling Formula One. Because if tomorrow there's another economic crisis or something, and they all decide to sell up shop like Honda did in 2008, what's going to be left of Formula One? It's good. It's better to go back to smaller independent manufacturers and teams maybe.
And if it's cheaper, you might get someone make a startup go, hey, I can afford to make these engines because there's
Yeah.
not all this institutional knowledge you have to have around battery packs and things. Any old, obviously not any old person, but it's the barrier to entry is much lower, then you might get another manufacturer come in and say, yeah, we'll start it. Maybe Renault will come back in. Who knows? But
Yeah.
that's a great point.
But Renault would probably coming back in because that's what they do. They in and out all the time. So
They'll be
you
back.
never know. Interesting thing about Renault for me that I was thinking about the other day, owning a big part of Nissan, and Nissan is now basically on the verge of bankruptcy. I wonder what's going to be happening. Because remember, right at the beginning, Red Bull was sponsored by Infinity, which is part of Renault, which is part of Nissan. And nowadays, it's a different story. And I wonder what the impact of tariffs and stuff are going to be on motor manufacturers. I see Mazda, for example, might be hit quite badly, going into the US. And I'm thinking about Nissan again, once again, dragging down the Renault group maybe, because I suppose the United States is a big export market. I'm getting a bit sidetracked here. I'm just, spitballing a bit, but
It's
that's
a very
interesting
good question.
Mm.
It's a very good question. It's something that we in work, for people who don't know, in cars and things, because of the car regulations, and they've got all different tests and things, different classifications of car in America. So they do all around the world. You have America specific components, and you have America specific models, maybe even America specific engines for cars if you want to sell them there. And you will have agreements with your suppliers because car manufacturers, I'm getting very sidetracked here. Car manufacturers don't make all their own components. They outsource them to other companies, and they will be sourced on the assumption of a certain number of vehicles sold per year. So if that drops down through the floor, then all of those deals are then certainly defunct, and the suppliers can start suing the car companies and things. Yeah. So that's very sidetracked, but it's a big topic.
Well, it goes for everybody. I mean, Volkswagen Audi is big in America as well. I mean, all of them could be negatively affected. And like I said, the point I'm trying to make is if car manufacturers decide to leave tomorrow, for whatever reason it might be, Formula One is going to be in trouble. It's a good idea to go back to smaller independent things, right? To circle right back to the start of my argument here. So yeah, we got a bit sidetracked, but it's still relevant. Okay, you thanks, man. That was interesting. I'm looking forward to this race. Japanese race is typically very exciting. That's a fast track, a very McLaren friendly track, by the way, which obviously suits me down to a T. And I'm looking forward to it. Are you going to be doing an instant reaction for us again?
I think so. What time is it on in the morning here? I'll try. As long as it's on a reasonable time, I'll do an instant reaction. And I'm looking, it's a proper heritage, excuse me, it's a proper heritage circuit. So I'm looking forward to it too.
The F1 Focus Podcast with Envia Velman and Huw Griffin.